Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. All right, boy, quick turnaround week. We got the Eagles tomorrow night in Philadelphia. One of my favorite annual things to do is to catch up with my friend, colleague, John Kincade, radio host extraordinaire from ye olde Philadelphia. We get to chop it up a couple times a year. He gave me a lot of time. So here was that conversation with John Kincade as we get set for Commanders and Eagles tomorrow night. Let me welcome in my friend from Philadelphia, the one and only radio host extraordinaire, John Kincade. How are you, John? I love our annual visits during Eagles week.
It's biannual, right? I mean, because it's twice a year now, which is good in the division, which is nice. And we are very much looking forward to Thursday night, even though you guys are finally going to make these, like our meetings, less enjoyable because I feel like I've always had the upper hand. Now, that Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn and everything. Gosh, I think you're on to something.
We are on to something. I will tell you. I mean, you told me before we started taping that you watched us play against Pittsburgh on Sunday. Yeah, and you may be impressed with what you saw, but I'll tell you, we've hit the attrition part of the season. We're actually very injured. Our best running back didn't play. Our offensive line's beat up. Jaden's still kind of a little beat up. It's still, we put 27 up, so I don't know if that adds any context for what you saw the other day.
Well, you put 27 up on a defense that I respect the hell out of. So that right there is something. The offensive line, I took note of that all day, especially that I think it collapsed a lot very close to the quarterback. And that is where Jalen Carter has been a public menace here. And they were able to give him late in the he had a quarter and a half off yesterday because of the Eagles blowing out the Cowboys. So I was watching that. But, I mean, 27 up on the Steelers defense, in and of itself, that's an A. And, in fact, if I had told you pregame that you were putting up 27 on the Steelers defense, I bet you would have told me they win that game.
I thought it was going to be like 20-17 is what I thought. That was my thought going into it, that I trust Dan Quinn in the defense. I didn't think they would give up a ton of points, but just knowing where we are in the season with the injuries that we have, that I expected this to be lower scoring. So, no, I'm happy with 27. And, frankly, a couple into the game, we might have won. So I would have taken that.
We've gotten used, and as you know, we love Zach Ertz here.
Yeah.
And he's a local hero, and we definitely think a ton of him and Julie. But Zach Ertz going to just where the sticks are and either coming up in just short or being right on it has been his entire career, and I've never figured it out. They would be, his nickname here was No Yak Zach. That was his Eagles. The Eagles fans called him No Yak Zach because wherever you throw it to him, that's where he's fallen. And he was sure-handed as hell for us, but he just doesn't seem to advance the ball any past where he catches it. And I actually think they got that call right. And I didn't know, but watching it, it's definitely, I can see if anyone argues either way, I can totally understand it.
No, well, okay.
I looked at it and I looked at it and said, I thought they did get it right.
Nobody here is blaming him. That's for sure. Everyone's mad at the refs. But that's funny you have that context to that. Here's what I would say about that call. And this has been going on obviously around here for a couple of days because everyone's mad at the referees. I think that the spot was wrong, that they should have respotted the ball where he actually was. However, I'm not sure he got a first down. So I think they should have spotted it where it belonged and then brought the chains out. But they didn't do that. And that's where I think all of us down here have a problem with what happened.
Yeah, how did they not bring the chains out?
I don't know.
That was another thing that that's one, especially when they took the time to review it. You would have thought that. But in and of itself, I got you off track a little bit there. It was a effort that said to me, this ain't your daddy's, well, I'll go by the proper term, Commanders.
Yeah.
This isn't your daddy's Commanders. I recognized the Dan Quinn style of play, I recognized the energy that the team played with. I obviously, watched Dan up close and personal from 2015 to 2020 in Atlanta, and I have an utmost respect for the man and the coach. And I can see his imprints are all over that. What I'm very happy about, though, to see as we talk is that while the Eagles are getting very healthy, after being very banged up, you seem to be telling me that you guys might be limping in a little bit on Thursday night.
Yes, we've hit the wrong time to have this. Like, this team could really use a bye. And I don't think, to me, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm waiting for, something terrible to happen on Thursday night. It's more like, I think you're going to see, hopefully, because who knows, because it's a few weeks away, I think you're going to see after our bye a very different version of this team, or I'm hoping that, no more injuries pile up, that you might see a different version of this team in the second go around in December. That said, again, I'll go back to, I thought Pittsburgh was off a bye. Pittsburgh's getting healthier. Pittsburgh's very, very good team. Very, very good defense. We're sliding towards that point of the year where we got a lot of injured dudes who are just fighting through the whole thing. So it was set up for the wrong thing. And yet that spot might have been the difference between them winning and losing. So we're all kind of, the sky is not falling here.
It shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't. No.
And more importantly, though, I think one of the things that I saw was I think it has been brilliant, and Cliff Kingsbury is going to get the credit, I think, mostly for that, because I know Dan has very little to do with his offense. And I also respect the hell out of the fact that he has let his offensive coordinators do their thing. He lets them cook with mild interference at best. And to me, I really thought that Kingsbury has done just an exquisite job of putting Jaden Daniels, into positions to make really high percentage of the time.
Yeah.
It's an aggressive offense, but it's not a reckless offense. I didn't see this. I actually thought that this is a far better offense than he put Kyler Murray into.
100%.
I'm so impressed. But Jaden Daniels gets the number one credit. The poise, the ability to just he gets rid of the ball. I can tell you this right now, as much as I think of Jalen Hurts, and he's already been to a Super Bowl and is getting in the MVP conversation quite a few times already in his career, I like how Jaden Daniels gets rid of the football under duress better than Jalen Hurts, and he's a fifth-year starter.
This guy is so far ahead of the curve. He's never looked like a rookie. He makes wow plays. It's clutch every single week. I was in the booth on Sunday when Pittsburgh won because they got, one of our defensive linemen to jump offside at the end of the game on what was a 4th and 1, and they were going to punt the ball. And the whole time I'm sitting there on the air going, have they not been paying attention? Because they're going to give this guy the ball back with a minute left. Have you not watched us this year? This guy is ice in the veins. He's a killer. We haven't had a killer like this in a long time.
And what I love is he's got a confidence about him, but it doesn't seem like it's an arrogance. He really impresses me, and I'm actually throwing up in my mouth a bit because I hate to compliment anything to do with your organization.
Hey, good is good, man. Good is good.
But I called him.
Right?
But I called this from the minute the draft was coming up, and my listeners in Philadelphia know it well. I said, "Oh gosh, do not let Jaden Daniels fall to the Commanders. Do not let that happen. Bears got to take him because I'll deal with him in the conference, but I didn't want him in the division."
Yeah.
And Adam Schefter, who joins our show every single Wednesday, him and I would talk about it, and he was just as high on Jaden Daniels coming out.
Yeah.
And he was just like that, and he uses the whole Lamar 2.0. I got to tell you, he looks better than Lamar at that point in his career. He looks heads and shoulders above Lamar.
As a passer, it's not actually close. We get the comparisons. Yeah, we get the comparisons down here to RG3, and I'm like, no. I'm like, RG3 was basically a running quarterback, and was great at it, and was an elite athlete. He is not anywhere close to the accomplished passer that this guy is in year one, and that's why we're so excited. Yeah.
RG3 reminded me a lot of the Cunningham Vic style.
Yes.
Anytime the first look, first read, breaks down, I'm taking off. And then he might throw it on the run, but it was more of a jailbreak.
Right. And he also, he's a track athlete, so he might score. Right. So
This has been fun. Now, I do believe this is good though. And by the way, you got to keep your running backs off Twitter. That was potty mouth this morning.
What's
Real
that?
potty mouth. You didn't see your running back on Twitter complaining about the fans? Oh, he was I mean, it was
the Pittsburgh. How many Pittsburgh fans showed up?
Yeah,
That's like he needs an education.
I'm talking about the fact. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about the fact that the fans are. You got to make sure. I think with a young team and with Dan's teams play with such emotion. And I watched a few of his Atlanta teams have success and then get a little bit distracted by the success and lose a little bit of the focus because he's such energy. He's so energy message driven and things like that. I wonder if they're ready, because in my mind, I have said it for weeks. I do not believe that the Commanders are going to be ready for this stage at this time. But I did agree with you that by December, it could be different. But this, to me, is the first time that they're going to be told, hey, huge game in the division, on the road, go show that you belong. And I have a feeling it might just be a bad spot.
It may be. And I don't like the setup with the injuries that we have. So we'll have to see. But I've spent way too much time talking about us. I have you on because I want to talk about the Eagles.
Yes.
All right. So take me back, first of all, just like a month ago when we were paying attention to Nick Sirianni yelling at fans during a win over a hapless Cleveland team. Like what righted itself after that? Because that screamed, oh, this is going to go sideways again. And it didn't.
Nick Sirianni is the definition of sideways. It's just how he is. I mean, he's like Taxi Driver and Falling Down, the Michael, character in Falling Down. He's like a mix of characters. He's constantly coming unglued. And then he comes glued again. And then he comes unglued. He's a guy that, to me, does not display poise. He's a hell of a football coach at building a program as far as people buying in, energy, things like that. Him and Dan Quinn, and I watched DQ down in Atlanta. They have a lot in common. They have a lot of attributes of what they're very good at that they bring to the table. I used to say with Dan that I felt that the worst part of his week as a head coach was the 60 minutes the clock was running. That in-game decisions and clock management wasn't his thing. Nick Sirianni is perfect at that kind of stuff, but he gets in his way with the decision making. Clock management, Sirianni gets an A+. Decision making under fire, he makes the strangest calls and then refuses, just doubles down on, no, I'm right. You guys are second guessing me, but it's a coin flip, and it's not. He's a strange cat, but he's a winner too. I mean, to go 41-19 in his first 60 games in the NFL, and he's already won an NFC championship. It makes it hard because when we criticize him, people are like, I can't believe they criticize Sirianni so much. But if you deal with him, it's like you're dealing with your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving.
So you think
you don't know what to expect.
So you think this is his record is emblematic of the roster you have and not him doing anything or not getting in the way enough to get in the way of it? What's the take here?
When in 21, 7 games into the season, his rookie year, 7 games into the year, he stepped away from play calling, where he was hired as an offensive guru, and turned it over to Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen finished out the year. They made the playoffs and got there. And then the next year, obviously, they win the NFC Championship, go to the Super Bowl. And then Steichen leaves, and he turns it over to a gentleman who I think is getting coffee now down there in Washington. He was terrible, couldn't do anything. But Nick Sirianni was the passenger as the plane was crashing last year. He's the passenger who is a pilot, sitting in he's sitting seat 11C. And they're like, can anybody fly this plane? And Nick Sirianni's like, can I have another coffee? Like he's not very aware. Whereas I think now they bring in a offensive coordinator who now has them 7th in points scored, and it's really rolling into shape. I think this will end up being a top 3 or 4 offense. And now when he stays out of the way, he's at his best. When he builds the culture, he's at its best. It's he can find ways to just complicate. I think he'd complicate making a 3-minute egg. I mean, he just is. He's a guy who gets in his own way far too often.
Okay. So, all right. The offense is a top 3 offense because of Saquon Barkley or other reasons?
A.J. Brown is the straw that stirs the drink. Saquon Barkley is the new toy that is taking it what I believe going to take it to an entirely new level. And
100%.
it's really warming up. Saquon is ridiculous. I mean,
I think he was the saving grace for you guys early in the season, actually. Like, he was the one.
Well, remember, you missed A.J. for 3 games.
Right.
So 3 of these games, A.J. Brown was out completely, and another quarter and a half of one. To think what A.J. Brown's doing with 3.5 games missed is ridiculous. He's a force and an unstoppable force. And by the way, those short little corners and everything, I was looking at them yesterday too. I was thinking about that. I'm thinking about him and Devontae going up the ladder on Thursday night. But that's where I think they will try to exploit it. But the offense is that what they don't do is they don't start fast. So it's they've scored twice in the first quarter all season long. They don't tend to come out, whatever scripted plays, it has not worked. The scripted plays do not work. So whatever they script all week long, once they get away from that script, all of a sudden the offense just cooks. So I don't understand what that's about. So I think if Washington wants to win that game on Thursday night, it is imperative that they continue to keep those first quarter struggles under tap. Because from the second quarter on, the Eagles have the number 2 offense in the NFL, points scored. So if you don't get them early and don't hold them down early, you'll lose late.
All right, take me through the Jalen Hurts story. So here's my opinion of him last year. I think he was hurt,
Sure.
And I actually think he was hurt significantly, and they probably didn't say a lot about it because I watched him, the previous years. His superpower was those zone reads runs. He was amazing at them, and they just kind of took that out. It wasn't happening. He wasn't moving laterally the same way. He wasn't running as often, and he was indecisive in the pocket. And I attribute that somewhat to injury. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think you're wrong. I would attribute it to, and my little weaselly sources would tell me it was a big bruised knee, a bone bruise, a deep bone bruise that wasn't healing. And as the season went along and it's colder and damper and everything like that and no rest, it didn't get any better.
Right.
He was completely hesitant to take off last year. Bram.
Correct.
And that killed the RPO because he was lethal the year before with it. This year,
if he's not going to run with it, knows it, you might as well not run the play. It's pointless.
Absolutely. And you'll notice, though, there's a lot less RPO on what they're doing right now when you're studying what Kellen Moore is being allowed to do. And by the way, since the bye week, I would suggest to you to get ready for this game, and I know how you do your film study, ignore everything before the bye week. Pick it up at Cleveland because the offense completely changed. Because that's when Nick Sirianni got called to the principal's office with Jeffrey Lurie, and I believe they were told, let Kellen Moore do his thing. The motion in the offense has tripled since the bye week, since they took off after their bye week. Jalen looks incredibly more comfortable. And the one thing that they're doing is Jalen's going under center like 4 times as much as we ever saw last year. So it's just I think Kellen's offense is cooking, and that allows Saquon to be more effective. And it is a passing attack that I just believe when the intermediate passing attack starts to click, and it really hasn't clicked that much yet. When it does, this offense is going to be even more dangerous than it is right now.
All right. So I remember back in the offseason after they fired everybody, but not him. Sure. And I sit there and I go, okay, well, what's his job? You guys were asking that. What's the guy's job? Yep. Okay. And you're basically painting a picture now that well, what is his job? If the coordinators are literally in control of everything, what would you say Nick Sirianni's role is in all of this now?
I don't believe he hired the coordinators.
I don't either.
So I think of it this way. I believe Howie Roseman hired the coordinators, and Jeffrey Lurie hired the coordinators. And by the way, what Vic Fangio has got cooking, now 5th in points allowed in the NFL, which is crazy.
What's the reasoning
on that defense?
What's the reasoning for Sirianni to be the head coach? If this was predetermined that this is how this was going to go, and it's actually playing out that way, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, here's what I would tell you. It would have been an unpopular fire within the majority of his players. And when I say majority of his players, I'm making an educated guess on what I know of the situation. If you were talking majority being over 50%, there were a lot of people that had a lot of great support for Nick Sirianni. And some of the people who really didn't, they maybe were jettisoned or moved on. So, and that's not Jason Kelce, who honestly should be his agent. The amount that Jason Kelce just is constantly defending Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni could do a hit and run on Broad Street, and Jason Kelsey would be the one, saying, that video is a little grainy to me. So there are people who defend him to the hilt. I think that's it. Is that you remember back in the day, Joe Paterno and Bobby Bowden and head coaches like that literally seem to be administrators?
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, Nick Sirianni is a NFL administrator. And he's got a lot of great attributes.
Not by choice, though. Not by choice. He doesn't want to be an administrator. That's the crazy part of it.
I mean, it's constant. He's every time he tries to insert himself, something bad happens. I mean, it's worse than Plaxico Burress in a nightclub with sweatpants.
Oh, here we go.
Someone's getting shot in the foot. I mean, it's just it's a constant get in his own way, and I don't understand it. But because I know him to be a bright guy, like he is a bright guy. But I think his motor is constantly left lane, foot to the floor, and I don't think you can coach that way and be effective. I think there are weeks where it works. I think you got to learn to take your foot off the gas pedal and let it up and let it down and everything like that. And I think Dan Quinn has learned that in his career. Yeah. And he's a little more suited for it.
All right. Last thing. So part of the thing that's been going on down here is, listen, this team's 7-3, but like even a few weeks ago, if you just kind of looked around and you went, okay, Dallas is clearly going sideways and the 49ers are all beat up. So let's see what they are. And the Rams are all beat up. Let's see what they are. And the Buccaneers are losing. Like all these teams that you kind of figured would kind of be in it kind of aren't. And so the door's just wide open. And now suddenly it's 2-team race for the NFC East. Are you guys viewing it the same way, except with a different expectation? Like, hey, I think we're the best team in the conference. Like, where are you guys now?
I view it, and I think my audience honestly views it as Detroit is on a level, on a part of the shelf that eclipses everybody right now in the NFC.
I agree.
Until proven otherwise.
I agree.
Then the next level down, we talk about shelves on our show. We do these shelf systems. I believe it's the Eagles. And I'm going to shock you with this: the Eagles and the 49ers. Still,
well, I mean,
4 49ers.
Yeah, I mean,
the
until
49ers, if the 49ers are in the playoff field, I think they can beat any team as long as they have a level of health. I think I could see them beating one team, maybe winning a road game, winning another road game. Like they're going to be lethal. I think they're the third best team after the Eagles, and I think they could be slightly better than the Eagles if they were completely healthy. And then the Commanders fall into the next realm where I think it's Commanders and Packers.
Packers, yeah. Rams.
2 teams that I say on the rise. 2 teams on the rise. A lot more unproven and have to show me more. So that's where I would have it.
Okay.
And I just think, but if the Eagles get the 2 seed, I think they can go to the Super Bowl. If the Eagles get the 1 seed, I think they will go to the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, that's why that Lions game was huge. They had no business winning that. And
they had no business winning that.
And because they did.
They got some big games coming up, though.
Yeah.
They got some games. The Lions have 3 or 4 games that I think they can lose on the way out. I could see the Eagles, splitting with the Commanders. I could see them losing at Baltimore. But other than that, I really do think the Eagles are going to – I don't see them with any more – I don't see any more than 4 losses. So, the rest of the way. Being at 4 losses at the end of the year, being 13. I don't think Washington can get to that 13 number.
I don't believe so either. I think we're gonna top out at around 11, but that's an incredible season for us in year 1.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. Yeah. And with Dan, I hope that it's going to be a great game Thursday. I'll give you a big hug. I look forward to seeing it. I can hug you.
Oh, that's right.
I'm cancer-free, so I can hug you.
Congratulations.
And I'll see you in person. I'll see you in person on Thursday night.
I look forward to it, and I will talk to you on your show later this week. I appreciate it.
Yes, we're looking forward to having you tomorrow on our show. And we're not as friendly when you come on our show. We're rude to you. Good. Thank you, Bram.
All right, John, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
See you, buddy. Take care, man.
The one and only John Kincade. All right, we will bring it back local with me and London Fletcher with a segment from the Booth Review next. Bram Weiss's show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Every week after the Commanders play, we have the Booth Review podcast produced by the Commanders with me and one of my booth mates, London Fletcher, the all-time great linebacker, and we get a chance to kind of digest what we just saw. This week was first time in a month lose a game. They fell to Pittsburgh 28-27. There was a lot of self-inflicted wounds that occurred with penalties, drops, missed connections, missed assignments on the offensive line. And then there was some stuff that was out of their control with some calls that went against their way and a spot in the fourth quarter that looked dicey at best at where it was placed and whether Washington should have had an opportunity to get a first down after what looked to be a very close 4th and 9 at the chains call that went against them. So here was part of my conversation with London Fletcher post the Pittsburgh game as we have the quick turnaround and get set for Philadelphia tomorrow night. And we haven't done this in a month, London, talking about a game after a loss, heartbreaker yesterday.
Yes, it's definitely a different type of coming on here and talking about a hard-fought game where we end up coming up just short against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, I thought we had it and thought we were in control of the game, but you can see why Pittsburgh is one of the best teams in the NFL year in and year out, and why Mike Tomlin is regarded as one of the best coaches in NFL history. But I thought we let them get away with that game, and we're definitely kicking ourselves that we weren't able to close that deal, close out the game and win that game.
Let's talk a little bit about the things they could control and the things that they couldn't.
You work on situational football. I'm sure they were talking about, hey, watch the hard call. Like, it was emphasized in the huddle, and then yet, you get in the heat of the moment, and I'm sure Russell Wilson maybe said, ha! I don't want to yell in my house as loud as Russell probably did it, different voice inflections, and Johnny had a mental lapse and end up lead to us not getting another opportunity to see what we can do.
Honestly, I was sitting there looking at you the whole time going, they're not going to seriously run the ball 3 times and then punt it back to Jaden Daniels at the end of the game. Like, have they not been paying attention? Because go look at what happened at the end of the first half. Go look at what happened to the Bears. Go look at what's happened over and over and over. They were playing with fire. They got lucky that happened. Honestly, I don't know, and I trust this quarterback, which is where I feel a little bit robbed today, that in 2 scenarios we could have had, if the referee spotted the ball differently or if there wasn't this penalty at the end of the game, we could have seen Jaden in one of these clutch end-of-game moments, and we just didn't get to see it yesterday.
Yeah, no, not at all. It didn't surprise me that Pittsburgh opted to run the ball in those situations because, you have 2 things can happen when you throw the football. You can have an incompletion, you can have or interception. Really even 3 things can have a sack. So you also don't want to have an incompletion and Washington doesn't have to use a timeout. So you want to make sure you're forcing them to use their timeout. So maybe you run it twice, and if you're going to throw the football, it's a safe pass. Maybe you give Russell a run pass option, get him out on the perimeter, something that's really safe. The Steelers also ran for 140 yards, so they're figuring like, hey, we've been able to have some success running the football, so why not run this ball 3 times, force Washington to use their timeouts. But yeah, a bit conservative. Hey, Mike Tomlin, he's been in a lot of big games, man, and they don't flinch, and that was apparent yesterday.
I want to get back into Washington for a moment, but since you just mentioned it, because we've seen the Ravens in person, we've seen now Pittsburgh in person. These are legitimate threats to get to a Super Bowl this year. Pittsburgh feels so old schooly. We saw it on film coming in. It's not a surprise. They're running stuff that is age old, tried and true. This is how you win physical football. They have a large, imposing group. Their tight ends are large and imposing. Their running back is kind of Derrick Henry light. They don't do anything really fancy. They run the ball at you. They run play action off of it. There's very little formations that fool what you're going to do. Defensively, you could probably be more inclined to talk about what they do that's favorable for them and why they're so successful. But there's something about watching this going, You know, I see all these crazy offenses, and we have one right now that's very creative and very open-minded, does a lot of different things. These guys are playing the sport the way it was played in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, tried and true. They will pound you to death. You just have to stop it, and I do appreciate it. Now seeing them, they're built to win. They don't ask Russ to actually do a ton. They're an impressive football team.
Yeah, no, when you've been, the head coach and the structure front office, they've been together for so long. They know it was much like the Patriots when Belichick was there for, 21, 22 years, however long he was there. They know what their offense and defensive structure is going to be. We know what type of players we want to draft. We continue. Pittsburgh has always had pass rushers, going all the way back to as early as the 90s when Bill Cowher was running it. They're going to run that 3-4 defense, have some outside linebackers rush the quarterback. They're going to have a huge offensive line, big tight ends, a big back, going back to Bettis and whoever else you want to plug and play at that Le'Veon Bell and now Najee Harris. They're going to pound you, run play action. It's not going to be pretty at all times. Their front seven is going to be dominant. They'll have, you could have also mentioned they got a playmaker who has the ability to make dynamic catches as well, and George Pickens. So yeah, we can run the ball on you. We got these big tight ends, but in critical situations, if we need a play, we can go to George Pickens, and he's gonna win a majority of his contested catches, 50-50 balls. Adding Mike Williams to that mix, it's a blueprint for success, and Pittsburgh, they're definitely going to be a player in the AFC.
Yeah, and they're coming along. Washington caught them off a bye. They're getting healthier. They've had 5 different offensive line combinations, 9 different starters. Their line's getting healthier. They got one of their primary players back, Cordero Patterson, who's, I don't know how they're going to use him, but he's a weapon. They finally got him back. They found some ways to utilize him. That was happening here, because I'm going to get into what was happening with Washington. They're off a bye. They're a very good team. They walk in. They're getting healthier. This team is not. Specifically in a couple of critical areas, this was going to be close the whole time, and this added up to, and I think really largely, the sky is not falling here. They lost
not at all
to a team that looks like could contend, and I know it's disappointing, but the timing of the relative health, especially on the offensive line and the offensive weapons on Washington, versus what Pittsburgh was bringing in here rested, there was a recipe here that this was going to be very hard to get a win yesterday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But with that being said, and you talk about the offensive line being a little banged up, and I thought Trent Scott played a really, really good football game. I had a chance to watch maybe the first half of the game from yesterday. He did some really good stuff. You saw his veteran savviness. They gave him some help against T.J. Watt, in moments and things like that. The B-Rob, Mr. B-Rob, the 2 games where we haven't had him, the game against the Baltimore Ravens and yesterday, those are games when you're playing big physical football teams, and it's going to be a grind out. It's going to be a four quarter type of game, and you need to be able to run the ball, effectively and be more balanced on offense. And you look at the game against the Ravens when we lost to them. We only ran the ball 18 times for 52 carries. Yesterday against the Steelers, ran the ball 22 times for only 60 yards. Yet we threw it 34 times. That's not the balance. That's not the recipe for success, and the reason why we've been able to win, 7 games up to this point. So getting B-Rob back healthy and whole is going to be critical for us in these games, November and December. So having a healthy and whole Brian Robinson Jr. And it's not a knock against the other backs or anything at all, because I thought those guys, have excelled and dominated their roles. But B-Rob's just a different element, man. He's a different animal.
Listen, we can talk about Eckler in a moment. I think he's been outstanding the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
Specifically, protection in the Giants game for sure. And then he's scoring touchdowns. They're asking a lot of him now. All of a sudden, he's carrying more of a load. I think he's been excellent the last couple of weeks in B-Rob's absence. when you go back to the Ravens game, because the Ravens were the way they were playing run defense at the time, I kind of had the sense that Washington was going to throw the ball a lot anyway. And I remember going up there and talking to you about it, going, this is the first time we're going to see a pass-heavy Commanders team. Let's see how they do against a very good contending type team on the road where they're going to be a little bit out of their comfort zone. They're going to ask Jaden to do a lot more with his arm than he has in the past, and they lost. So I landed on B-Rob would have made them better, but I'm not sure it would have been a critical difference in that one. Last week against the Giants, they were really, Chris Rodriguez was outstanding. Eckler was outstanding.
Yeah.
They were able to run the ball. But if you look on the whole, and this is where the trouble spot was coming into this week, because the Giants don't have the rush deep does. But if you looked on the whole, the per rush average was down. Everything was a little bit down. All the signs of why this team needs Brian Robinson so badly were there and evident. And I did feel like yesterday was the one of the three that he's missed. You were going to feel his presence not being there, and it showed with one of their roughest outings trying to get yards on the ground yesterday.
Yeah, you talk about feeling presence, and part of feeling presence was Pittsburgh, because we were, dropping back and passing so much. Their defensive front four and linebackers, every now and then they would bring a safety, a nickel, things like that on blitzes. You felt the presence, and they only sacked Jaden 3 times, but oftentimes their presence, like keeping him contained. He only rushed for 5 yards, just not allowing him to really get through things, and having to maybe deliver a throw a hair faster than he wanted or a hair sooner than he wanted because of that presence. Part of having a B-Rob in the game also is your ability to pound a team, wear them down, slow down their pass rush, because now they're a little bit more tired because they've been getting leaned on a lot more. You're not going to tire out a defense running the ball 18 times against the Baltimore Ravens or 22 times against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another thing, the element of play action pass. Play action pass is it's also to suck up the linebackers and safeties on the second level, but it's also to slow down the pass rush. And when we had some success moving the football, when we went early down play action passes and Eckler was making some great blocks and things like that, we were able to make plays in the passing game. With that, you add B-Rob to the backfield, that defense, they're going to be keenly aware of him and say, all right, we're gonna be gearing up to stop him in this rushing attack.
You feel his presence. He's a tone setter. He's going to match the physicality of the team they're playing against. That's one of the really great things that's popped up here throughout this year is all this, you're going to like the way we get down, you're going to like the way we play. You see this week to week with the physicality that the Commanders put up against, especially very physical, formidable teams like Pittsburgh. But there's just these minor differences, like when Robinson runs and when he's out there, that per rush average just up a yard more than what it was is the difference between 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7 to 2nd and 6. And it's a massive difference for what kind of calls that they can make on those plays. That's where you feel him. It's the physicality, it's the tone, and it is on the margins here. And I felt like they were going to miss him big time. And I think they did yesterday. And hopefully he's healthy soon. I don't know if he's playing Thursday or not. Hopefully he's healthy soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. You say 2nd and 6, and let's take it even one more down. 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3 is a lot easier to convert as opposed to 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 6. And so, yeah, we can both agree that B-Rob makes a big difference.
You can get the Booth Review podcast in its entirety anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can get it at commanders.com on the Commanders YouTube channel as well. Back after this, Bram watches the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Final thoughts for today as I'm heading up to Philadelphia to get set for Commanders And the Eagles tomorrow, we're going to know a lot more about Brian Robinson today and whether he's going to be able to go. Of course, he's missed the last 2 games with a hamstring injury. How about Andrew Wiley, who did return to practice on a limited basis, was active last week against the Steelers, but did not play as they just didn't feel like his shoulder injury was kind of strong enough to hold up, so they held him out. But because they made him active and kind of had him on an emergency basis, albeit with Cornelius Lucas out and Trent Scott starting, it was really an emergency basis. If Lucas is coming back, which we'll find out about probably later today as well, after missing the last 2 with an ankle injury, we'll have to see how they handle Wiley. Does he split time with Brandon Coleman as they had previous to the injury to Lucas? Do they move him to the right side if Wiley can't go? Do they leave Trent Scott there and rotate Lucas and Coleman again? Coleman had probably one of his rougher outings of the season last week, beaten by Alex Highsmith a couple of times. So the team's got a lot of things to think about as they head to this game up in Philadelphia. Jaden Daniels, and we've been talking about this all week, is the season kind of catching up with him physically a little bit? The running numbers are down. He's taken a lot of hits. Of course, he was dealing with the rib injury from a few weeks ago. And he says he's fine. He says he feels great. He's saying all the right things. But attrition obviously is a really big deal as we get set for a quick turnaround in a big division game against 7-2 Philadelphia up at the Link tomorrow night. Some of the news back home centers around the new home. And RFK is now back up for debate as to whether this is going to get taken care of before the new cycle and new leadership takes over. So the election is over now. The presidency will turn over in January. And the RFK bill, which basically has been hung up in a Senate subcommittee hearing for months now, is scheduled to be voted on, according to Front Office Sports, by next week. So in a week from now, it's one of a number of bills that are going to end up coming up. And if it were to get out of committee and then head to the floor, it would need to then pass the Senate and then become a bill that could land on Joe Biden's desk before the end of his term. And then we'll have to see, will he sign this? And essentially what the bill states is it would turn the RFK land over to the district to use for its purposes and extend a very long lease. And everyone certainly believes that if that were to happen, eventually, if the politicians on the D.C. City Council and the mayor, who's openly said she wants to put a stadium there to house the Commanders and potentially the Spirit, potentially other events as well, that they would then have to pass that through. And so it would take some time, but at least the biggest step of getting back to RFK will take place over the next couple of months, we think. Now that leadership has changed in the Senate, the Republicans will take control of that chamber. It's going to be hard to know if this doesn't happen now, get to the current White House's desk now, get through the Senate now, whether this would be re-envisioned next year when it is a new administration and new people in control. The Senate currently is controlled by the Democrats. It will be under Republican control next year. So it's imperative that if this is going to happen, it needs to kind of happen now. And the time is really ticking. Here we are, a month and a half, 2 months away from the change, the transition of the government. And of course, all of the senators and House members are going to be off in December, mainly for the Christmas break. So if this doesn't happen in the next few weeks, it probably won't happen, if at all, or at least that process would start over again. And then that would probably open the door for Maryland or Virginia to step in. And then Josh Harris and company will have to decide, do they want to continue to try to wait out a process to get the RFK land, or do they want to just move forward with a new stadium? I would think likely in Maryland, but unknown to what degree they would be in negotiations with the state of Virginia. And after what happened with Monumental, I would think that they're walking very slowly into and crawling towards what could be another politically difficult situation, since that stadium plan was batted down by one particular senator down in Richmond. We'll see what happens. The hang-up has been the senator from Montana, Steve Daines, who in respect to one of his constituents, the Wetzel family, has asked for the team to honor the old logo that was retired with the name Redskins. And they did so by having a ceremony with the family earlier this season. The logo is on display in the stadium. They are not going to return to this logo. It's not going to be at midfield. As far as we know, they're not going to sell merchandise with it as of yet. And we're not sure if that is satisfied. And I think that's where the rubber's going to meet the road next week. Will this senator relent and say that the team has done enough to satisfy his constituent to move this stuff forward? This is what's been holding this all up here. It's my personal opinion. This is about the ownership of the very valuable IP, but I'm not accusing the family of anything like that. However, it is hard to understand what exactly do they want if the team is honoring the old logo and honoring the legacy. So we'll see how that goes from here, but we're a week away and we're going to find out, does this thing at least get to the Senate floor, and then will it get voted on? And if it does it get to the White House, and does it eventually become law? And then we can ask Muriel Bowser and the city council, will this thing push forward, and will the Commanders have a stadium maybe within 4 to 6 years, a brand new home in Washington, D.C., back at their old hallowed grounds? We'll see. A few other things, obviously, that were going on around the league, quarterback-wise, all in the NFC and directly affecting Washington. Dak Prescott is going to go on IR. Dak Prescott is not going to play in either one of the meetings that Washington has. Of course, Washington plays the Cowboys next week. Cooper Rush, for now, I guess, is the quarterback. Trey Lance, I think a lot of us are surprised he hasn't gotten an opportunity to at least show what he can do. So we'll find out if they actually turn to him at any point in time. But for now, it would be Cooper Rush and the Cowboys next week at Northwest Stadium. And of course, they're playing Dallas in week 18. And that could be a huge game for Washington in the hopes of ending up in the playoffs, either as a division winner or a wild card team. The future of Daniel Jones is being in debate right now as the Giants go into a bye week after they played in Germany. Brian Daboll, the head coach, is being non-committal. Adam Schefter's putting out tweets about what kind of money has to be guaranteed on Daniel Jones' contract if he were to get hurt, before the end of the year. And so this may be a Derek Carr situation where they shelve him to avoid him getting hurt, so he would pass a physical to potentially move on from him. So we may have very well seen the very end of Daniel Jones in a Giants uniform as a starter, barring any kind of, crazy turn of events with quarterbacks there. Obviously, Washington's played the Giants twice, so this could be it for Daniel Jones. We have a complicated history with that guy. He beat Washington more than he beat anybody else through the years. Of course, Washington swept the Giants earlier this year. And then there was the firing of Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator in Chicago in his first season under Matt Eberflus. There is a lot of reporting that some of the Bears players who had asked for this to happen also asked for rookie Caleb Williams to be benched. That is not happening. And of course, Chicago's going to have to address that and publicly probably deny that's the case. But what a mess there as they kind of move forward and try to figure out. And obviously, there's going to be change in Chicago. There's just no other way around that. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow as we'll get you set for kickoff in the evening, the Thursday nighter between the Commanders and the Eagles. Bram Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.